Right. Well, I want to welcome you to this last session of the International Communal Studies Association conference in 2024. This session is devoted to culture, community, and creativity, and to help us become more cultured in our communities and more creative. Christopher Sims is coming to present poetry and culture. He is a poet, an artist of the spoken word, which I think is a much better way of telling somebody that you're a poet, actually. He has been all over the United States, and he has presented in front of groups of 3 and also 3,000 and anywhere in between that. So he's used to being a public presenter. He's a published poet with a book called Universal Citizen that came out some years ago. So, Christopher, it's great to have you here. I'm really happy about that. Before you start, Sally, would you like to say a couple of words as the Zoom tech person on the session?
Yes, just a few words. Hi, everyone. I am Amsale Temesgen, and I'm the Zoom tech for this session. I am based in Northern Norway, and I am part of the organizing group for this conference and part of the board of ICSA. Thank you.
I forgot to add that my name is Jan Martin Bang. I am also speaking to you from Norway, and I'm also part of the organizing group for this conference. And my other life is that I teach permaculture and eco-village design here in Norway. Christopher, it's over to you.
Thank you, and I appreciate that introduction, that warm introduction, and especially the opportunity to be a part of this event. I consider myself a communitarian, somebody who specializes, engages in, and helps to create and be a part of community, no matter where I am. Not only have I've been to 40 states in the United States, I've also been in Canada 4 times, but I have yet to travel beyond North America. But I'm looking forward to doing so eventually, because I'm all about community, meeting new people, traveling, and all of the wonderful and beautiful things that go along with that. And I've definitely
Christopher, you're muted.
You just got muted now.
Christopher, you are muted.
I'll try to unmute. Okay.
Hopefully folks will get a lot out of what I'm sharing today. And you all can hear me okay?
Yep, now we can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. So looking forward to sharing a group of poems that deals with community and everything imaginable when you think about community. So I'll get off into my poetry here. We are one across the global diaspora. A world over is one that does not recognize the many flavors of the people, its communities, the possibilities of unity, togetherness. We are one, Bob Marley style, each one of us, a child of the universe. We are one love, one chorus, a collective of spices from every part of the world. We are global, international, intercultural, galactical, rhythms reaching each other as sound waves meant to make music, movements together. We are better together, brilliant across the landscape of thoughts, philosophies, teachings, theories, institutions, global revolutions, distributions of democracies not containing hypocrisies. We got to be unified, universal, anti-commercial in ways we recognize, treat one another. We must be the planet's lovers. Be it a blessing, attesting to the thorough ways of community where you and me come from, soldiers of the sun, waves of the moon, where all things sacred are consumed. This is a trusted coming together where we make one another better. This is a letter to all the ancestors we treasure, a love letter for an endeavor or broader understandings, softer landings where interculturalism is demanding a more peaceful world, a more compassionate, rational, regal, poetic, artistic, spiritual world, a more collected, calm, communicative, and reasonable world, a world more treasured, triumphant, tactical, less war-filled, a world where we all are harmonizing, singing, dancing, dreaming together as one, as one, as one, as one. And that's that first poem.
Wow, I enjoyed that. Whoa, thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Okay, up next is just this, and this is just a stream of thoughts as I've gathered these thoughts about community and how I see things and everything. This world is not this world is not egalitarian. It is more unitarian with variances of visions, hopes, manifestations, and marvels. Our children will be able to prosper from such a world, coloring books for adults and children's so we can color the nuances, the beauties of such an international global world. Red people, brown people, black people, yellow people, white people equal. White people, yellow people, black people, brown people, red people equal. Yellow people, black people, brown people, red people, white people equal. Brown people, red people, black people, yellow people, white people equal. Red people, brown people, black people, yellow people, white people equal. And that's that poem. And with that particular poem, what I chose was to how I chose to equalize us and all of the variances and nuances we come in colors regarding being human. I started off each stanza with the next color and then the next color and then the next color. So just trying to make sure that there was some equal balance in that, and I was conveying the message. So here's the next poem. Interculturalism, a vision, a system, an intention, a dimension not rooted in division. Intercultural, multicultural, multi-voices, multi-thoughts, multi-colors, multi-dreams, multi in the most beautiful of extremes. Multi-sings, multi-poems, multi-rhymes, multi in the ways we choose to get by. Multi-languages, multi-tongues, multi-musical styles, multi-drums, multi-guitars, multi-violins, multi-pianos, multi-tambourines, multi-strings, multi in the way we fight, push back, dream. Multiverses, bringing all of us together. Multiness brings us closer together, makes us better. Community, unity, you and me, we and you cannot be blue when we are working for me and you and I, as long as we try, as long as we keep our heads to the sky. You and I, the world, the people, equals embracing, facing the challenges of the world. You and I must let our strengths unfurl. We and we, you and they, we can meditate, chant, kneel, bow, sing, walk in nature, pray for a better day, for better days, for new ways of thinking, deciding, including, creating diversity, creating a collectivism that comes natural, that is hopeful, magical. What would we take away from this convening? And that's the end of that poem. Actually, magical was the last word in that poem. So those are just more thoughts about my understanding of community, collectivism, beauty, the world, us coming together, all those beautiful things. So up next, and this is the last poem in this particular series, and I have a couple other pieces too. What will we take away from this convening? How will we be better at seeing one another, at seeing the world, our neighbors, solutions for our communities, a global unity? What have we learned? How different will we live? How better will we breathe? We in ourselves, we believe. Together, how we can stay connected, share, achieve. Who are we now? What have we changed? How can we work together to ease people's pain? What remains? What lessons can we teach? How can we reach better solutions How can we find the right answers? How can they be shared properly with the right distribution? Have we formed connections? Will the internet keep us connected in our world, the universe, better respected? How can we remain reflective so that the best living situations, communal situations are made manifested? Yeah, that is the collection that I bring to this particular poetical reading, this sharing about community culture, about multiculturalism, about us being in spaces together, about this world, about change, about hope, and about dreams. And I have two more pieces I'll share. This last one, since I look at the earth as our mother, um, women as profound human beings on this planet, the most profound human beings on this planet, I wrote this poem in honor of all women. It's entitled Sacred Woman. You arrived here into this hemisphere many millennia ago from miles beyond the moon's mist. Legend has it that one breath from your bosom could break the cycle of man and bring rebirth. Woman, you are of the earth and every element of the universe. For a reason, when any man wants to harm, violate, degrade you, harm, violate, degrade you, only fools will tamper with your treasure. The wind without end sings silence to pay homage to your pricelessness of bliss. You are women of the wonderfulness of shining stars. Afar into the galaxy one could only find gifts that would equate your divine sunshine. Christopher D. Sims' poetry can never be powerful enough. Roses don't possess enough regality. Diamonds lack the luster needed, and gold doesn't have enough gleam to honor you, Miss Supreme. You are the shadow of the unspoken spirits that manifest life, the shadow of the unspoken spirits that manifest life, the shadow of the unspoken spirits that manifest life, the secret of the sun, the whisper of the night. And that's that poem. That's entitled Sacred Woman. And the last poem that I'll end my session, my time with here, and I guess we can have a discussion about poems and have more poetry. But this is the last one I'll share. It's actually what helped me write all of the poetry that I've written today and other pieces that I've written. It's entitled "I Am a Poet." I am a poet. I turn words into sun rays. I engrave page after 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 page with rhythmical rage. You see, once I engage, the page becomes my stage to wage wars of syllables, consonants, vowels, syllables, consonants, and vowels, syllables, consonants, and vowels. A howl in the thick of the night to conjure my poetical mind. Each word written transforms into light. I am a poet. I dive deep into the infinite world of diction to bring forth image and vision. I'm a scientist who's always in the lab performing experiments with vocab. I am a poet. I'm a prophet of verb, creating logic with words. I must write and recite, write and recite, write and recite, write and recite and recite, write and recite, write and recite, write and recite, write and recite and recite and recite and recite and recite and recite. I cannot resist the urge. I am a poet. And that's that poem, and that marks the end of my poetry.
Wow, that was I want to say something now because I listen to a lot of jazz, and I kept wondering whether you are actually jamming or whether you have kind of worked on each word in itself. Um, I've been reading in the last many years a lot of Jack Kerouac.
Beat poet.
Jack Kerouac, he published a load of books. And I always thought, he wrote them like I write books, but I struggle over every word and I go over it again and again. And it turned out that he didn't do that. He wrote a book several times until he got into the rhythm of it. And then he would sit down and he would write for 36 hours without stopping,
Wow.
just jamming, just like Oscar Peterson or John Coltrane. They didn't write down the music. They played it so many times that in the end, it just came out. And I wondered whether that it sounded to me like you kind of got into a poem and then it just came out. It was just like, there's the classical music where you play every note like it should be done, like, Beethoven,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
always the same. Uh, or you're like John Coltrane, where every time you play, it's going to be different, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it just it's normally I use poetry, I read it, bits of paper, I read poetry, somebody else's. But this sounds more like it just comes out, it's you.
Yeah, especially those last two pieces. I consider myself definitely a vessel, but sometimes I've written the poems in a way where they just every word was meant to be there, and definitely influenced by. I listen to a lot of jazz music, especially in the morning time, and sometimes in the evening or at nighttime. So, jazz has a pretty profound inspiration on my poetry, the way that I think. So, yeah, I just yeah, and thinking about the way that I write too or recite poetry, yeah, I'm jamming. I'm trying, yeah, I'm trying to. There's that rhythm that I already have there, and I'm just trying to make sure that the words are that they're written or come out in the right way.
Yeah, it was very nice to hear you. It's almost like coming into a trance. This rhythm, you kind of almost your mind gets into the same rhythm. So it was kind of meditative to listen to you. Although the digital medium probably is not the best because sometimes, the sound quality can be a bit poorer, but it was a very nice experience.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And especially to come from a woman and that poem, Sacred Woman, I wrote that originally for my mother and my two sisters. My mother and my two sisters raised me. And everywhere I perform pretty often and consistently, and sometimes all over the country. So it means a lot for me to be on stage and say that my mother and two sisters raised me, and had had they not instilled in me everything that they thought beautiful and good and wholesome, I wouldn't be the person that I am. So that means a lot.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
and
so
sometimes,
nice.
yeah, thank you. And sometimes I'm lucky enough to be on stage with the band. And when I'm on stage with the band, those poems turn into songs, like musical compositions. And that to me, that's when everything's just it comes alive, and I'm really at my best when I'm on stage with the band, like a jazz band or something.
Yeah. Wonderful. That would be great to experience. Maybe you could come to our conference in Portugal in next year, and we always have some cultural events and so on. And your poems would definitely fit in because we have both community and environment interested or people that care about both the social and the environmental aspect in among our members.
Oh,
So it would
fantastic!
be
I would love to. Yeah, that would be like my first like international trip. So I would love to go to Portugal and be a part of the event with poetry.
Yeah, that would be great. Uh, I was wondering a little bit about poetry and community. Um, I I'm trying to think if I know of communities that use poetry in this kind of way. Um, the one community that I have been very involved with, the Campbell community, is very religious, and they have poetry in the form of prayers, but
Mm,
their poetry, it's a bit further from music than you are. There's
mm,
a difference between prayer and poetry. Uh,
mm,
and there's also a difference. Often prayer is very formalized. It's written. You say exactly those words each time. Like you bless over meals, maybe, and you always say the same thing.
mm,
But using poetry as a musical medium, that I've come across a lot less. But that would be an interesting thing. I mean, another thing is sharing poetry, and that we've done sometimes. We've sat around and said, okay, everybody bring a poem, and we'll share them and maybe talk about them, and what feelings came up, and so on.
I can understand that. Yeah, I've been doing this a lot. Like every day for the past maybe 4 or 5 days, I've been recording like recording maybe 2 songs a day, and I rap too. So most of it has been rap, but
Yeah.
there's a rapper named CL Smooth from the group P Rock and CL Smooth. And CL Smooth, the rapper, says the music inside my rapping. So it makes me think about the musicality inside my poetry and how it leans towards jazz and a lot of other musical genres. And I'm thankful that I've discovered that, I've learned that, and I've often I've been on stage with bands, and you would think that we practiced uh, for a month or two together before we arrived on stage. But since I have a musicality in the way that I deliver my poetry, I just made it feel natural, and I would even I know how to. Even if I'm brand new with a band and we're performing on stage, I know how to stop and let them kind of groove out and make some good music and then come back in. So I just love that whole experience. And I've seen crowds become really engaged in that. And to me, it makes me feel good as an artist.
Mm.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. How sometimes it takes hold of you.
Mm.
I get that feeling too sometimes, and I use poetry a lot in my teaching.
Oh, great.
I get lots of feedback that people say, and I teach, ecology. It's not like the most exciting, sexy subject, and it's you associate with poetry and music, but we both we sing together, and I always use poetry, and I get very, very positive feedback from that. But it's interesting to talk about the musicality of poetry because I guess rap has really brought back the the musicality into poetry, because a lot of modern poetry has somehow, the rhythms have changed from. In fact, I have a poem here that I was going to read by Walt Whitman, which is actually, it has this refrain that keeps coming back, and so it is more musical than a lot of modern poetry, which is, music is different. The music is very different.
Mm.
I mean, I grew up in the '60s, and I grew up with the big, the bands, the Beatles with Bob Dylan and the Rolling Stones and Jimi Hendrix, and my parents said, "Well, that's not music, that's just
Oh.
noise."
Yeah.
Uh, and I find the same now. My grandchildren are listening to this stuff, and I think, "Ooh, that's not music."
Mhm.
Wondering whether there's something every generation has. And it may be the same in poetry. When people first started breaking out of the rhyming poetry, uh,
Mm.
people say, "Well, that's not poetry. It's got to rhyme." Uh,
Uh-huh.
and I think actually all things are good if they're good. It's not, they have to be like this. They're
Mm.
good because they're good in themselves. Um, So yeah, but can I just read this one poem, because
Sure.
it's Walt Whitman, and it's actually taken from a much longer poem, I think, but it's called "There's Hope for the Flowers."
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
And when we plant seeds, there's hope for the flowers. When the earth revolves on its axis, there's hope for the flowers. In springtime showers, there's hope for the flowers. When we plant seeds, there's hope for the flowers. In winter night, beneath the bitter snow, there's hope for the flowers. When a newborn baby cries, there's hope for the flowers. When a human being dies, there's hope for the flowers. when he plants seeds, there's hope for the clouds.
Oh, very nice.
And that's what you were doing, Chris. You were also getting this rhythm of saying the same thing so that it goes into you much more firmly. Like when
Yeah.
you nail, you don't just give one hit. You hammer a nail in and you hammering a poem in.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I learned that method from Amiri Baraka. Years ago, I heard him do spoken word poetry. Maybe even Gil Scott Heron, how they repeat some particular lines or words. And the more that I did it, the more people would approach me after a poetry reading and say, I like how you did that, because it made them remember what I was saying. So I keep it as a part of what I'm doing as a poet or on stage.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, so everything should be like jazz music, really. Um, I'm Sally. You also teach, right? So you have.
Yes.
I'm basically a teacher. That's what I really am. And I have experienced a few times that I get into a subject that I'm working on teaching, and I've a couple of times felt it was like when you get into the end of that jam session, when you are totally, the musician is just totally into the music. And I felt that. And I've started in the last few years co-teaching with other people. And I always say at the beginning of of a session we're teaching, I say, we have to think of ourselves as a jazz band.
Nice.
We have a theme that we're going to teach, the theme we have in common.
Mm.
And sometimes we're going to do this nicely in a nice rhythm, all three of us. But then sometimes, Jennifer, you have a solo, and
Mhm.
you blow that solo. Wow, and then we'll come back together again. And then Andre, now it's your turn for a solo, and then I have my solo, and to see it like these long jazz sequences that, each player has his little line, the drummer, and he gets totally
Mhm.
into it. The others are just going there thinking, just go for it, just go for it. They're just like this, pushing him on, but he's
Mm.
he's center stage. And I think teaching, and I think many things should be regarded as that. We need to bring, what you're bringing is poetry. We need to bring poetry into everything we do.
Mm. That's pretty powerful. I like how you set that up, and yeah, I when I'm even when when I first get going, jazz gets my day started, and I'll sit down with a bowl of cereal and a cup of coffee, and especially if I hear something like um, my favorite things by John Coltrane or um, yeah, any really good jazz classic, it motivates me and pretty much pushes me through my day. And I think, yeah, when you work collectively with people like a jazz band does, you tend to get some really good work done and some really powerful work done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There were a few communities that were, um, they were actually bands.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in the States, I know of less, but in England in the 70s, there were groups of people of 20, 30 people. They were, some of them were the musicians of the band. Some of them were the technicians. Some of them were the builders who would build a stand so you could have a place to play. Some people made the food, and they lived collectively. They traveled collectively, and they regarded
Mm.
themselves as a community. And there was one that lasted for years called Principal Edward's Magic Theatre. and they would travel around for years. And basically it was the same people. A few people came and went, just like any community, but they were a musical community. And it would be very, very interesting to think of musicians and poets traveling together or living together. But you know,
Yeah.
it's a performance thing, so you need to go to different places to perform. But that's a whole
Mm.
side of the whole side of community that we're very kind of academic. You know, we research the history. We just had a 300-year history of a German American community, which is very, very academic. Actually, yeah. So, you know, it's it would be interesting to research music and poetry in community and how
Yeah.
blend together.
Yeah. We had there was a one session earlier where we were going through chanting. And they are community that chant and meditate together.
All right.
What was the name? I'm just trying to so that I should do yeah, kirtan, building community through sacred music and meditation.
All right.
Yeah, so it was more on the chanting and the music side of it, and it's not a lot of poetry in the music. It's all following the rhythm and the chanting, but they have a community that have this at the heart of it. So and they're saying that they have found it was a very good way to connect with each other, to solve conflicts, and they had a community. They originally settled in Hawaii, but then the community got destroyed by the volcano that was there a few years ago, and then they moved
No,
to
a couple of years
Colorado.
ago. Yeah.
Hmm?
Just now, a couple of years, a year ago.
Exactly how long ago it was, I don't remember. I don't know if they said, but they it must be longer than a year ago because they have now established a new community in Colorado. So so when you are talking about poetry and music as being essential, or you know, as being important in community building, and there was one session around that topic earlier today. I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, right.
I can see Colorado being a perfect place for that, because Colorado, probably 8 hours from where I stay, a very not there are really no tornadoes there. There are no volcanoes there. So and there's a ton of art and there's a ton of art and entertainment going on in Colorado too. So they picked the perfect place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. It's safe and inspirational.
What do you teach?
Have you lived in community? Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yes. So I teach and research in ecological economics. So
Hmm.
it is a field that tries to find ways of having community and society within ecological boundaries. So I teach on topics around quality of life, and communities such as eco-villages that have environment as a strong part of their identity, and you know, the successes and challenges they experience. So I bring that into my teaching, and in the fall now this year, I'm going to teach a course on degrowth, well-being, and indigenous perspectives. So we're trying to bring in what we can learn from indigenous communities and their perspectives towards nature, and you know, ancestors, and the relationship with animals and plants and so on. What can we learn from a different way of looking at both community and environment? So these
Yeah,
are things that I teach, yeah.
yeah. You both are teaching some pretty profound things and things that we need to learn too. Yeah, and I think that's beautiful and awesome. Where are you from originally?
I am originally from Ethiopia, but I've
Uh,
lived in Norway for over 20 years, 22 years, 20, yeah.
I think I could see that in you. I went to school in Mississippi here in the States, and um, there were a few Ethiopians, and your face structure is very similar to theirs.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, people that have Ethiopian friends eventually start to recognize the Ethiopian facial structure. So, yeah.
mhm.
All right. Yeah, but have you lived in community or how did you hear about ICSA and decided to bring your art and your poetry to us?
Yeah. I once lived in Madison, Wisconsin, and I've lived there twice. And Madison is a city in the States that's known for its co-ops. They have some really big houses there that they've turned into co-ops. And
Okay.
I stayed in the Emma Goldman co-op the first time that I lived there, and that was amazing. And you found people there that um, they had interest in a variety of things, but especially the environment and social justice and anti-racism activism and all of that. So I've definitely lived in that. And then I've been in community with the Baha'i and Unitarian Universalists for quite a while, and I've been around a ton of poets and musicians to where it's been community like all the time, because no matter where I go, I tend to find the artists, and there or we're living in community all the time. But I, I searched the web for different opportunities to share my work or to be in community with people, and somehow I found out about you all in this conference, and when I read it, it spoke to me, and I was saying that's me right there. So I decided to apply to present, and yeah, I'm glad I have.
Wonderful. But this is the first time I guess you've taken part in ICSS conferences
Yeah, yes.
because
But
we were in the US in 2019.
oh man, where were you in the U.S.?
On the East Coast in New York State, upstate New York State, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was in
around Hudson.
I've heard of Reynolds Austin. I love New York State. I wish I would have known about you all back then. I probably would have came.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was Copic. It was a Camp Hill
yeah.
uh, village in Copic that hosted us.
It was in four Camp Hill villages.
Okay,
But yeah, it was there. Yeah, it was a good conference, a good big conference.
I can imagine. And New York State is beautiful.
Oh, it was. It was
Yeah,
beautiful and spacious.
Yeah, there's a ton of land in New York State. Yeah, I think sometimes here in the States, even we just think about New York City, but New York State is huge, and it's comparable to, I would say, Texas and California. When you look at it from top to bottom, it's huge.
Mm. Mm.
yeah, and the communities we stayed in, they were very special, and there's a network of those kind of communities around the world. And I've been associated with one of them here in Norway for quite many years now. And we have a lot of cultural events. So people come, I guess more music than poetry, but there is poetry too. Um, and people come, and the cultural events are very important as part of the community life, because in a lot of communities it can be a lot of talking, like decision making, and then you're talking about the ideology, and you talk about your economy, and you talk about all these different things, and a cultural event brings you out of that. It opens up a new dimension, and just listening to music together, or dancing, or having poetry sessions when you share poetry, um, you see a whole other side of people. And that is so important, because otherwise it's a little boring, like if you have to talk business all the time. So in the community that we lived in here, that we live next door to now, we had a period of a lot of conflicts, and we decided that in order to solve these conflicts, we were going to have every 2 or 3 weeks a meeting, but we would hold it outside the community, like on a beach somewhere or in somebody's house, but off the community. And we were to bring some food and some drink. And the only thing we were not allowed to do was to talk about the community.
Nice.
So,
That's great.
so, and it really helped. It really helped. The meetings became a lot more relaxed after that, even business meetings I'm talking about. And the whole thing of seeing another side of people. And I think, actually, the more I think about it, shared poetry sessions can be very powerful for that. And it's good, because some people may well bring their own poetry, and sometimes that's very good. But a lot of people feel, oh no, I couldn't read, I can't write a poem, I can't do that. Or bring somebody else's poem. That's fair, that's okay. I mean, I don't write poetry. I did, as a teenager, I wrote some poetry, and but I thought I was going to be a poet, but it didn't work out really. But to read somebody else's poem is great. And it's also a nice way of connecting with them. I had somebody on a course, actually about nearly 10 years ago now, and he wrote 2 or 3 poems during the course, and I still use them. And it's wonderful, because every time I read his poem, I think about him, and he lives on. I mean, he's still alive, but I don't have contact with him now, but he's still a friend from that time when I read his poem. So in a way, poetry, it immortalizes you. Your poems spread out. In fact, I'm wondering.
Yeah, I have a poem called "I Met Her at a Bookstore," and it's my most requested poem because I wrote it here in my hometown, and people love hearing it. And I can be on stage, and if I'm at a point where I'm not sure which poem I should say, somebody will say, I want to hear, I met her at a bookstore," and then yeah.
Okay, you got it here?
Yeah, I got it memorized. Yeah.
Wow, you memorized. Wow, that's great. I forget everything. I have to have bits of paper. But can you read it now? Can you say it now?
Sure, I'll share it. Yeah, it's a very musical poem once I think about the musicality in poetry. I met her at a bookstore amidst the aroma of coffee, laughter, and conversation. Somehow our eyes met. We began to admire and respect one another's presence. In essence, I considered at first glance a chance for my soul's salvation. Clearest to me was the sunshine of her smile and the beauty of her dimpled cheeks, which caused me to stumble over my speech from time to time. She read Nikki Giovanni, Toni Morrison, and Chomsky. She had a fetish for black and white photography. She majored in art with a minor in sociology. She saw me sipping green tea serenely and wanted to meet me. Turns out that she beat me to the last copy of Pablo Neruda's On the Blue Shore of Silence, you see. That's how we met. Her hand touched mine, and in a brief moment in time, we seemed to marry one another. I found myself smothered under the glory of her greatness, singing silently in a blanketing bliss of love's unpredictable beauty. I met her at a bookstore. I met her at a bookstore. I met her at a bookstore. My life has changed forevermore. And that's the poem.
Oh, that's really nice.
Thank you.
That's great.
Mm.
Great.
Yeah, and it's a story. It's just I'm telling it's me storytelling, and I love to tell stories.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
It's so nice. You kind of bring us into that moment. It's almost like we're in standing there watching these things
Mm,
happening.
mm.
So it is very powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that when I wrote that poem, that's what made me get better at placing people right where I wanted to be when I was writing the poem. And I actually I wrote that poem at a bookstore, but that whole thing where I talk about people meeting and becoming lovers, that didn't really happen. But I wrote it in the bookstore, so I was at the perfect place at the time.
No, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I was in my head writing, romantic movies, and then you got married, and then
Yeah.
oh, so nice. Yeah.
thank,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, that was there's a film about that, it's called Notting Hill. Have you ever seen that film?
I haven't seen that. I need to see that.
It's
Maybe
it's,
I
uh,
have, but it's been a long time.
it's an English film. It's very funny, but actually it starts off with two people meet in a bookstore.
No.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll search for that. Maybe I can see it on Prime Video or something.
yeah.
But yeah, that whole thing about her, her hand touched mine, yeah, I can see that. It was very vivid, I saw the bookstore.
Yeah, me too.
It was
Awesome.
great.
And I love bookstores. I love cafes. So
Right,
yeah, when I can share that poem at a coffee shop, a cafe, or a bookstore or a coffee shop, it brings even more meaning to the poem.
right,
Yes.
right. One of
And
my
that would be a good, oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying one of my favorite places. I lived in Israel for many years. In Jerusalem
Mm,
is a book cafe.
mm,
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
that's nice. Yeah.
they're great. You can read and yeah, great. You were going to say something, Amsala.
No, I was thinking that it's a very good promotion for a bookstore because people they must kind of feel like, oh wow, that sounds like a nice story happening in a bookstore. I want more of that, so I'll go more to a bookstore. Maybe it'll happen
Yeah,
to me.
and
Mm.
I'm a huge fan of the movie. Have y'all seen the movie Love Jones?
Love Jones?
Yeah.
Nope.
Uh, Nia Long and Lorenz Tate, they're both American actors. They're the stars of the movie, and
Oh yeah.
uh, Lorenz Tate's character is he's leaving a company, and he's writing a book, and then Nia Long, she's a photographer, and they spend time like hanging around in bookstores and all of that. So whenever I watch that movie, it reminds me of my poem and how how that whole setting is just perfect for all kinds of culture and conversations to happen.
Oh, okay. We'll watch it then and think of you, Chris.
Oh, great. You know what? I'm gonna type my email address in the chat, and I would love to
Yeah.
know more about the conference in Portugal.
Yeah.
Well, I could actually ask you. Let's just have a look. Um, did you must have registered for this conference, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I should
So
have.
so we will have your email. And one of the things that we're going to do is that we will send everybody who was here, we will send you the details of the conference in Portugal.
Mm.
In fact, one of the things, I mean, this has turned into um, oh, that's great. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Chris. One of the
Sure.
things that this has turned into a conversation. It's not a session with lots of people and people putting their hands up to speak. But I would say at the end that it would be really good if people became members. But I'm going to make sure that everybody who was here gets the newsletter from the ICSA, because conference in Lisbon is first of all, it's a very good place. It's very accessible. There's just the Atlantic between North America and Europe. It's actually the westernmost part of Europe, and it's easily accessible from the whole of Europe. And I would think that most of the people who come to our conferences come from Europe, which includes Israel. There's a lot of people from Israel here, and then Europe and North America and South America. That's where the majority of the people come from. And so very, very accessible. And there'll be a lot of Brazilians there. So because it's a Portuguese, we were thinking maybe of having it partly in English and partly in Portuguese, but I don't know how much that's going to work out. English tends to be our main language.
I can understand that. Yeah, I would love to attend that. And oh, you guys take me back to, I went to school at the University of Memphis in Memphis, Tennessee here. And the last time I was in school there, I was in an international dorm. So I was hanging with folk from Germany, France, and maybe England, and maybe two from England, one from Germany, and one from France. And that was a great experience. And Memphis was very, very exciting to them because Memphis, of all of this, is cultural and musical history. And Dr. Martin Luther King was killed there. So just, yeah, we had a great time just getting to know each other and being in Memphis.
Yeah.
Yeah, Memphis, the whole, and the whole blues rock.
Yeah.
As it's a key.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be great if you also have a network of people that are interested in communities that might be interested in our conference. Maybe you can spread also information. Now that we are concluding this virtual conference, our next job is going to be working towards, having a good program and finding good venues and all the practicalities around organizing the conference in Portugal. So information coming out to people early enough so that they can start to plan, even book travels or flights and so on early, so that they get good deals would be good. And also, I mean, when we were organizing our conference in the US, then we had communities and representative of communities with African American background were more present. And maybe if we reach out early enough, then we'll have more representation from different groups and countries. So the latest was in Denmark. So maybe with Portugal, we can improve a bit our outreach.
Yeah, I can understand that. Those folks from the African American community that showed up, were they? I'm thinking particularly that they probably were they from, let's say, social justice or anti-racism or spiritual communities.
I think so. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think so. I remember participating in some of the programs, and they talk about issues of diversity and racism, and how a lot of intentional communities can benefit from taking diversity seriously and being a bit more aware of issues around inclusion and equality and so on. So they were interested in those areas. But when they
yeah, I can imagine, because there's a huge push in this country for that right now. But there are large corporations, and even some of these politicians are saying that diversity, equity, inclusion, we should not all be talking about it. So they're trying to take it away from the national landscape, but they won't be able to. So yeah.
No, I think that we would definitely value these things. It is part of.
Yeah, and I think also there's a whole scene there of in music and poetry and dance also, the whole thing of fusion, the whole thing of having different musical and different cultural things working together. I mean, I did for years in Israel and the Middle East, and the most exciting stuff were these bands who were playing, Western music with Arabic music, with Middle Eastern music, and I was there when there was a lot of Ethiopians came, and within a couple of years there was Ethiopian music everywhere, and then people started playing together, you know, so that you had, blues people playing with African people, and these fusion of Jewish music like klezmer playing with Arabic music, and
Oh.
and getting all these things together. And I think it's the most exciting thing is when cultures meet and can share with each other, because then you get all kinds of new ideas which you would never get if you're just playing blues or just playing klezmer. But if you're playing blues and klezmer together, something new is going to come out here. If
I
we
can
could
imagine. Yeah.
Lisbon, which is a more polyglot, it's more multicultural, because you've got the whole of this, the Brazilian thing, whole lot of, African, Brazilian, indigenous culture, and you've got the North American, you've got, the blues came out of all these different things, West African music, and gospel came in there. And then, the folk music from the Appalachians, which was essentially Northern European folk music, and they meet. Cajun, that's down near where you are, right? Cajun music.
What happened to the line, Doc? Yeah, the Cajun music, the Appalachian folk music. I love some of that. It's some of the best music in the world to me. It's really good music.
Great, and some of those, some of that music is from Northern Europe.
Oh yeah, interesting.
And
Cajun is right down in the southern states.
You could buy a policy that might not give you enough coverage when you need it most. Call now to receive free information on the senior care plan from Senior Life Insurance.
Chris, are you having to move because there's other people around there?
Yeah, I had to leave a room that I was in a second ago to come in here where I am now. I mean, I hope y'all can still see me.
Yes, we can see you.
Oh, great.
Looks like you're in the red light district there.
I was going to say that I love Ethiopian jazz music.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's some really, really good stuff.
Oh, great. Yeah. We have Mulatu Astatke is a world-renowned artist. He's a bold guy artist. He's in Norway often, but I don't know if he comes to Bodø, but he's been in Oslo.
Okay, you must tell me.
Yes, I will let you know when he comes.
What's his name again?
Mulatu Astatke. I can write the name. Astatke. Yeah.
To look him up.
Yes. Yeah. I'll write his name here.
Okay.
Here. Did you get it?
Yeah, I see it.
He's seen as the father of Ethiopian jazz.
Oh, nice. I'll look him up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of music on YouTube, and they have these like hour-long videos of just some really good music, and I'm pretty sure I can probably find some of that about him on there.
Yes, absolutely. He's very popular. He's he's 80. So it's like decades long experience with music. So
Oh wow, yeah,
long,
he
long.
probably has a lot of recordings then.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I don't know, you probably know this Ethiopics. It's called a series of albums from the 60s, 70s, 80s that they have. I don't know how many albums or CDs they have released, 10, 11, 12. So you can, yeah,
That that
check it out.
Mulatto Asake released.
Huh? No, no. This is different songs, different artists from the 60s, 50s, all the way until 30 different volumes.
Oh wow! And what was the name of the group
So,
again?
oh, it's not a group. I don't know who's producing it, but it is there. I wrote the Wikipedia page. It's a
Oh, I
series
see.
of compact discs featuring Ethiopian singers and musicians. It's Paris-based world music record label that is producing it.
Okay. Ethiopia. Okay.
Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just have to go and put some wood on my fire because it's cooling down in here. Hang on. I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah. It's it is probably cold. It's these days lots of chaos in the region that southeast eastern Norway has a lot of snow, chaos, and very cold temperatures.
Mm. Yeah. He said it was I think 12 below there or something like that.
Yeah. What do we got?
Yeah.
We've got we
Yes,
got
yes.
16 below here.
16.
Oh.
That's very cold.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very
Here it's
cold.
11.
Here it's 6 or 7 by you.
11.
11. That's cold for Buddha.
Yeah.
We had 25 last week.
Yes, it is.
That was cold.
Oh. Yes.
So
I think we have had 14, 15. So that's the coldest we've experienced here in Buda since we moved here.
okay. This session is still being recorded.
Okay.
I'm thinking that maybe we should kind of officially wind it up, and then
Yeah.
we can carry on talking for a little bit. But before we wind it up, I would like to read just a very short extract from a poem by a Norwegian poet, but it's going to be in English, so don't worry, we can all understand it. And then, Chris, can we finish with a poem from you at the end?
Sure.
Yeah. So there's a Norwegian poet called Rolf Jakobsen. He's dead now, but he has written many, many poems. And I just want to read a short extract from one called Green Light. Creatures that rustle in the shadows, all the crooked, deformed ones in the world, with tiny feet and far too many eyes, can hide in the grass. That's why it's there, silent and full of moonlight among the continents. I have lived in the grass among the small ones who resemble broken twigs. From their towers of cowslip, the bumblebees came like bells into my heart with words of a magic species. The winds took my poem and spread it out like dust. For we have forgotten this, that the earth is a star of grass, a seed planet, swirling with spores as with clouds from sea to sea, a whirl of them. Seeds take hold under the cobblestones and between the letters in my poems. Here they are.
Oh, very nice.
So I thought it would be nice
Thank
to
you.
have a poem about poetry.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I really enjoyed that.
Good. So, Chris, would you like to? Actually, I forgot to ask you. I'm sorry. Do you have a poem that you want to share with us before we finish?
Oh, I actually came prepared to be a Zoom tech.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Well, you zoomed very well. Chris,
yeah, I've
you want to finish with
I've been
a poem?
enjoying.
Yeah, I'll do this piece called Word Warrior. And I just performed this piece a few days ago here in my hometown, Rockford, Illinois. There was a pizza and poetry event, and I did this poem. I think I did this poem last, or maybe it was right before the last poem. But when I wrote this poem, I was thinking about how can I transform the way that I write poetry, and this is where it came. I am a word warrior, social sonic sounds whose infinitely bound to the beauty of the universe, which I bring to life through verse. I'm a word warrior. I use words as weapons to combat ignorance, negativity, and self-destruction. Each word is encoded with instructions to annihilate regressive activity, instilled with peace and positivity so we discover our talents, gifts, and abilities. I am a word warrior. I'm in harmony with the heaven within. Once I meditate heavily, my diction becomes medicine. Once I focus and begin, the universe becomes a sacredness that seeps from my pen. I transcend time with reason and rhyme to climb the divine and at the same time discover the sunshine, creating a revolution of thought, line after line after line. Word warrior, traveler and unraveler of our infinite galaxy. With tenacity, I display grammatical mastery. My capacity to defy verbal gravity is just a gift naturally. Words, weapons, wisdom, grammar, vernacular, diction, language, dialogue, conversation, lyrics, verses, poetical demonstrations. I swim inside the softness of syllables to become liquidly lyrical. My thought process is rhythmical. When this one individual miracles take place, I embrace the intelligence and elegance of the universe. Out of me is beauty, verse. Word warrior, creating cosmic dialect not yet found. I'm connected to beauty, to passion, to fire. I am rhyme and reason. It is beyond desire. Word warrior. And that's the poem.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. What a great
Thank you
ending
so much.
to
Thank
this
you.
session. What a great ending. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. It was so different from the other sessions to explore poetry, to think of this creative impulse and we had a great conversation. And I really felt like, well, I've known Hamsali for some years now. I really felt I made a new friend now, which is great. And I want to thank everybody, all of you. And we are actually in 10, 15 minutes, I think it is. We are going to have a closing session, but I think it's in another room. Isn't that right? Room A. I think we're in room B. So we actually have to go out of this room and then link in to room A, which means it's session 12A on that website. Amsali, you know where that is. Chris, do you know where that is?
I don't think so. I'll need the link, but I think I'll
No,
hop
it's
on
not.
my
So it's
laptop and then
oh, okay.
find the link.
Okay. It's 12A, because it's on the web page, it's all the way at the end. It says closing remarks. So probably that takes us to 12A.
Okay. I'm just doing something now. So when we finish the session, which we'll finish in a couple of minutes, in fact, let me switch off the recording. Thank you,
Yes.
everybody. I'm going to switch off the recording now.